You know, what's interesting actually is that when we talk about French colonies, former French colonies, we often think about places like Haiti and the Ivory Coast or Vietnam. Those are all places where the French, they end up, they're sometimes called fourth world nations rather than third world nations because of the poverty that is there. But one of the former French colonies that is a first world nation is Quebec. So what makes Quebec such a success story for former French colonies? Well, there's a theory about that. They were taken over by the British, and I know the French would be offended by that, but unfortunately, bringing in the rules and governments of the British, allowing free enterprise, all those kinds of things led to a well-developed Quebec and Canada, rather than what we see in Haiti and African former colonies and Asian former colonies. So, you know, I was talking about the British and the rule of law, and one of their first colonies, of course, was the island of Ireland. And what we have here is I'm in Northern Ireland, and across that bridge is Southern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, because the British still haven't gotten out of here. Now, if you do any Irish history, you'll realize the English are the bad guys, but what they did bring to Ireland, to the United States, to Canada, and the rest of the world is the rule of law. And that's a good thing. I know I didn't have to come to Northern Ireland just to explain that, but that's how different it is nowadays. And you can go from Northern Ireland to Southern Ireland without even a road sign telling you where is where. But let me explain why. Economics. If you're in the north, you're going to go down to the south for clothing. If you're in the south and you're going to have a party, you can come up and buy your wine here in Northern Ireland because it's cheaper. So it's commerce, economics, making the world go around and bringing things closer. You don't see the guns that you saw back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. You still saw policemen with guns at every border crossing. Now it's just like crossing a bridge. Now, obviously the British are not native to Australia. There was impact of them coming here. A lot of locals were affected. It's really not easy to find a place to lecture here in New South Wales, the largest, most populous province of Australia. One of the things they celebrate is Australia Day. That's January 26th when the first fleet landed right here in Sydney Harbour. For a couple of reasons. I hope you can hear me. First of all, I'm on the Royal Botanical Gardens here in Sydney. They don't look very royal or particularly gardenish to me, but it's important to understand their history. 1787, that's when the British said, we got too many prisoners here and they didn't know what to do with them, so they decided to ship them to Australia. They used to ship them to Georgia, but of course the American Revolution put a stop to that. So 1787, they shipped about 11 ships, 1,000 people get sent over from England to Australia. They land right here at the harbor. First thing they do is build a collectivist farm, government farm, right here on these lands. Lasted 3 years. Socialism fails every single time. I don't know why I keep having to repeat that, but when we're talking about traditional and market and command economies, it's important to understand a couple things. First of all, when the English got here, there was already a traditional economy, the Aboriginals, as they're called now. At that time, they were called Indians, so they didn't know what else to call them. Some theorize that the Aboriginals have been the longest-running economy, 50,000 years, but there's really scant evidence to really prove that. But the point is, they did have an economy. They're in a state of autarky. They did very little trade. Nobody knew about them. The British came, and suddenly we had the new state here, New South Wales it's called, eventually became the country of Australia. But this became a park. Governments are good at parks. Why aren't they good at farms? That's Farm Bay out there. The government isn't good at farms because it's productivity, people. The government does not have strength in productive tasks. They're much better in beautiful tasks, like a park. from that came the beginnings of the nation of Australia. It's important to understand not everybody wanted to see the British come. What they did bring, a set of laws and the concept of private property, and certainly there were people hurt by it, but ultimately grew a great nation.